and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our Father in heaven, as we come before thee at the beginning of this city council meeting, we pray for thy guiding hand to be with us in the decisions which we make. We're grateful for the moisture which we've received. We pray that thou will bless us with more, that we may fill our reservoirs and be able to sustain the lifestyle that we enjoy. We're thankful for all the good citizens of Santa Clara who continue to support and volunteer to make it a better community. We pray that thy blessing may be upon them. Again, we ask for thy guiding hand in our decisions and the discussions which we have. And we say this humbly in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Danny. Council, we do have a request for communication of the council. Mark Sanders is here. He's requested to discuss property line use of property for 3641 Vista View Drive or Vista View Circle. Come on up to the podium, Mark. Just need you to state your name and your address.
My name is Mark Sanders, and my address is 3641 Vista View Circle.
Great.
Sorry, I know this is long in the tooth, and many of you probably remember the issue at hand is up there on the heights, and there were several neighbors that got that letter, and kind of turned into a firestorm. Hence why I stepped back, because I kind of initiated that, so I kind of felt on the hook, like, okay, I need my neighbors to resolve this because I kind of feel like, the bad guy, sort of, So I let them go ahead, and obviously I have the guy to my right that has the big American flag that we all know. He's really who started all this, but and then the neighbors to the left of me as well. And I just wanted to clarify, I actually have finally, he was able to get me at least something, and I redesigned my backyard. And I wanted to clarify because I know, golly, it's been a year, maybe more, when you all were there, I kind of said what I wanted, but no one actually looked at my lot. And I just wanted to clarify, it wasn't that I was going to dig it up or move anything. All of this had been done 8 years ago before I bought the house. It had a drip system, trees, everything in that land, and it's been being used, like I said, for 8 years. So it wasn't like I was all of a sudden doing all this stuff. I just wanted to improve the fence that I had put up when I purchased the house along where I thought the edge was. And I don't know if can I hand this to you right now?
Sure.
So you
Absolutely.
We can share.
Yeah.
We'll share.
We can share.
And again, this was 2 revisions, but you know how it is trying to get any landscaper or general contractor right now this is after 2 weeks of trying to have him adjust stuff for me. So, so my problem, especially now, is I went ahead and have cinder block fence on both sides. The area that I scratched in red was going over there a little bit. And so I said, okay, can't use any of these trees. Everything has to be back within the line. I kind of have the end of fence right there. However, I do have the black dot. The trampoline is completely buried and set in where it is, which is like probably 65% in what is city property. Those huge decorated stones I've already had, brought in a dump truck before anything was finished and placed there. So to try to drag them anywhere is really, I'd have to tear up my whole entire backyard again and have them drive over the grass and probably break that sidewalk. And so, I mean, really what I'm asking for is nothing on the sides. I've removed all plants. The drip line has all been ripped out of that whole area already. So at this point, it's just the kind of V, I don't know, not V, but triangle with the big fireplace. Again, all that stone has already been dropped there because it's just big pieces of flagstone, and he's going to put in a big circle with a fire pit. But that's it as far as any usage on that area. So it will have no water, no trees. There is one tree, and I will dig it up and pull it back. It's like 4.5 feet over the line. I'll dig it up and move it or throw it away, I guess. One or the other, because it'll probably die without being watered. So I was hoping, because I like I said, I did talk to both my neighbors on both sides, and they kind of said, we reached an agreement. It's an agreement, but as long as you don't water or plant any life, or they will let you use the land. And so I'm hoping we can work out some of maybe that same thing since I'm to this point. And again, I'm not digging up any of the landscape. I'm not reshaping any of that hill. It was already like that when I bought the property. I just wanted to leave everything basically how it is and use it. And again, I was going to do a cinder block wall around the back that's probably 4 high. And I since said, okay, we can't do that. So I was hoping to maybe just doing a wrought iron, because again, in worst case, I could move the wrought iron fairly easy. I actually do know how to weld, so I could undo it pretty easily and pull it back. So I wouldn't even, the whole back wouldn't have no cinder block, not to include it as footings and everything else, which would require more digging. So I was hoping something like that could work.
So basically, you've got cinder block down both sides stopping at the property right now.
Uh-huh.
And then you're just, the trampoline's outside a little bit, outside about 2/3 of it. The fire pit's outside of it.
And then the rocks.
And then the rocks.
Yep, that's all that would be in it.
And without seeing the verbiage on the minutes, I think our concern was water. And there, obviously there's concern with, I think the wrought irons.
Yeah, I think the one concern was water. The other concern was just formalizing permission to encroach. We have that, and we've developed a new request where you can request to get onto city property. Is this something that you're looking for just a use on, or looking for ownership?
Obviously I would love to own it, but I understand that right now, especially what happened, everyone's gun shy to give anything on that edge. I understand the reasoning. I understand not wanting to even mess with it, even if, I brought in 100 experts to say it was fine. It's like, I don't want to get burned again. I understand the city's, err on caution. I understand. I own a business. Sometimes you have to do that, even if it's like, I think we're fine, but I need to just, So, maybe in years, and it still hasn't moved, I'd like to maybe try it again. But if I can at least get the usage for now, that would be wonderful.
There's a little piece. I'm looking at the aerial imagery, and there's a little piece of green, kind of looks like north of is your existing trampoline's not where it's shown on here, right? It's a little farther south. Is that right? Am I looking at the right lot?
Might be.
Is that grass, that little bit of green that kind of straddles the line?
Oh, the grass, even the sidewalk isn't even on the thing. So the grass and the sidewalk's pretty much good, because I have the little, I don't know what markers they'll call it.
I'm looking at
when I had it resurveyed, he came and did like 3 marks all the way across my lawn. So I'm about that far from my sidewalk.
And I don't know the date on this aerial. Brock, I'm looking at the Washington County website. Have you got it up too?
I'm on Google Maps. Looks like not as detailed as yours.
And I'm just seeing you've got landscape stone out there. The black circle's got to be the trampoline, I would think. There's a smaller fire pit next to it. Is that ringing a bell? Am I in the right place?
Yeah, there's probably a whole bunch of flags thrown out
Mhm.
kind of
There's
right
some
where.
large boulder decoration that's up on there.
Uh-huh.
And I apologize. I'll need to get the guys to refresh my use, but we worked something out with some of the other neighbors to the north.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Or
and
Brock?
basically the agreement that we reached with the other neighbors was it was to accomplish a couple things. One, it was to deal with the issue of water being added to the slope. So one of the things the agreement required is that if they were watering off their property, that they would have to cease doing that. It also was intended to relieve anyone of the obligation to have to tear anything out other than landscaping that they had already put on city property. And that was, I think, to, alleviate a potential hardship for somebody that was encroaching, but we recognize may have done so, innocently or because the city hadn't, maintained its property line there. The other part of it is all of those parties basically agreed to fully indemnify the city for any liabilities that might occur. And on top of that, the agreement can essentially be canceled by the city at any time with a certain amount of advance notice. And so to be clear, I think the purpose of the agreement was not to allow more encroachment to happen. It was to stop the encroachment and to minimize the damage and to protect the city. So, I mean, I think we would offer a similar agreement to anyone who has, I assume we would offer a similar agreement to anyone who has existing improvements that encroach in this area. But if we're talking about new improvements, in my mind, that's a different story.
Yeah, I think I was looking, because do you have any improvements back there now
Clicked the 20
Um,
high res.
that are shown on the lot that I'm looking at? I think it's the right lot now. I was looking at one a couple doors down from you, but it's,
Oh, that
there's
might have been the
nothing
next.
shown in the backyard on this
Uh,
lot.
Yeah, like I said, all that's been placed is the flagstones pretty much where it was going to drop, and then all those big rocks in the trampoline.
You can kind of see those.
So Matt, did we get it?
Too old, yeah. It's 2016.
All but one. There's one that I need to follow up on, but my understanding is they're willing. We just need to get with them. So. Is that right, Brock?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got it.
Council, any thoughts?
I think that when Mark bought this property, I think Andy Johnson's one that was the owner before him.
Mhm.
And that property was graded by Andy. All of that was done when he was there. And basically at the same time, these other people were doing their things. Andy was doing his. And I think that Mark is right in the fact that he thought that his lot went out to where it was graded. I think he ought to have some concessions on this.
Okay.
So I will say on the Sanders, when theirs came to attention is they were building a fence and the footings were built, and that's when Corey put a stop because determined that the footings were built on city property. So there, as far as I know, that's where it still stayed. Nothing has gone on since then. That's been a while.
Yeah.
But it was just
It's-
stopped at the footings until something was
Come-
decided. And then I believe Mr. Sanders actually has been to TRC and had a discussion there. And I believe at that time, the discussion, we'd gone on with what Matt had stated about the agreement with the other neighbors. And so it was said at that time that the city's stance was we weren't allowing anything new to be placed on city property.
So the question would be, trampolines there, fire pits there, boulders are there, water's been pulled back. Obviously, as a resident, you want your yard fenced in. And so really, I guess for us would be, are we okay with a wrought iron fence, leaving what's been there and which I think that's obviously a better solution than block, and it's permanent, but not permanent, easy to remove. And
Yeah, I think if it's the wrought iron concept that can be removed if necessary. And I'm running the scenarios and I know the concern relative to the landslide, but it's really for your protection. The city's probably not going to be able to access to do any remedial work on the back of that point because the hillside falls away all the way around where you're proposing your fence to be.
Yeah.
So if that, there's I think in your subdivision, isn't there a building setback and your building doesn't encroach into that?
I had to do some, we had to do some figuring out when I expanded my patio this last 2 years ago.
Okay.
And Camber, a lot of footings far back away from it. So I know all about it. They're, rules I already know I have to live by. So it's fine.
I think the wrought iron fence is something that can be moved. It could also be adjusted in the event that you had something a lot easier than a block wall.
Yeah.
And rigid construction. You're not proposing any new plants back there. You're not proposing, very much beyond the rock that's already stacked there. I don't know if I have an issue with this one if the same hold harmless agreement was put in place to where in the event something starts to happen on that slide, that it's your slide. There wouldn't be any obligation of the city to come up and do anything unless there was a fault somewhere else. So like if we allowed somebody to go down and cut under the hill or do something like that. Council, is that kind of what you're thinking, Wendell? And
Yeah.
Ben, something like that? You two are okay with it?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I agree. The thing I'm concerned about is lots on the edge in the future that border Santa Clara property. How do we
Yeah, kinda
police
open
that
lots.
without all of a sudden having to make changes too if they build out into the city property? I
think,
not
and I
on
appreciate him
his.
coming
right.
to us and following the process. And I think what we need to make sure happens is there is a defined process. And if the neighbors want to come through the process and we can review the application and then get the assurance it's going to be built in accordance with the application, maybe you can mitigate some of that in the future. If people go ahead and do it without, then I don't think there would be, they're not, the thing that you want to make sure of is when you build that fence, everybody that comes after you is going to think you own out there. And you're not going to own it. So there's going to have to be something to make sure that's specified and probably recorded so that it is actually tied to the property. Matt, is that making sense?
Yeah.
To where,
and that agreement would be recorded. Yeah.
okay,
so.
yeah, as long as there's something that.
Would we just add a note like there already is a note in my plaque where it has already the other lines, the no dig and that. And
Yeah,
there'd
this
be
would just be another addition onto that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's basically giving you the ability to use it, not necessarily own it, and you're assuming all the liability and responsibility for the use on the stability.
And I think that protects us when, 30 years down the road when someone comes in, makes the argument, well, the fence has been there for 30 years, that something's documented that, yeah, we were aware that, and it's not a lot of space, but I think it's probably the way to go.
Now,
Is the permission for the use granted just to Mr. Sanders, or does it go in perpetuity with the land?
I think the same permission granted Mr. Sanders would go with the land,
Okay.
but the same limitations would go with it as well. At least that'd be my thoughts.
Yes.
Maybe I have a question, Mr. Sanders.
Okay.
Back when we went through this, I actually visited the site. Scott Bannon and I visited it and took some pictures up there. When we went through and it was staked the city property was staked. And as I look at the pictures, I don't see a fire pit on city property or installed. And if there's one installed now, my question would be, at that time, if you had been state told not to put anything on city property, and did you then go ahead and install a fire pit and these improvements on city property after we had already instructed you not to put anything
No,
on city
all
property?
this stuff was set, and then when Corey, because at first it was, you need to see what happens with your neighbor. You need to stop, see what happens with your neighbor. So everything was placed, everything was done, and it stopped. Hence why I've had such a hard time getting the general contractor back to finish my fence, because I told him to stop a year and plus ago. So now I've been trying to get, just the sides have been agony to try to get it done, because like I said, nothing has been done in my yard.
All right, I mean, I see in these pictures, I see the boulders and the large flagstone in a crate, but I don't see it actually being placed and put in as any fire pit, anything there. I see the boxes and stuff that the crates are there, but they haven't been actually installed and placed there. So,
Yeah, they're just all there's 3, 4, I can't remember how many pallets are sitting there. They're just all sitting in that circle so people can just set them down.
okay, well, so that's my concern is they were there, but
Yeah,
you're
they're
told
still there.
not to install, but
They're
then-
still wrapped up.
So the
So
fire
nothing-
pit hasn't been
No,
installed.
nothing has been done.
Okay.
And then, like I said, I didn't want to,
I just wanted to make
do
sure that the
anything
fire
until
pit
we
hasn't,
work this out officially. So
yeah, I just want to make sure the
everything
fire
was
pit,
off.
nothing new had been installed since we had said nothing to be installed
Since we
on.
talked,
city property,
definitely
okay.
since we talked, but even
Okay.
before then, nothing's been
Okay.
done, Like I said, it's
So is Matt or Brock, is this something that comes back for formal approval? The agreement's prepared and come back for formal, or just direction given to staff?
Well, I think because it is an agreement, it probably needs to come back for formal approval. The others we sort of did as a group, and the council considered it as a group, and so that was done. I don't want to discourage the course that you're taking, but I do think it's clear from the conversation here that there is a difference, between what we did with those other property owners and what we're being asked to do here. And that is, you're being asked to allow additional improvements to be made on city property. And that's not what we did with the other property owners. So just to make clear that distinction. And, I think we could talk about the difference between permanent and temporary and what can be moved and what can't. And I think that's fine, but I think we need to be clear about that this is not quite the same situation.
But in Mark's defense, I think he's the one that came to the city to try and get this done, thinking that he had the property line. Andy had kind of told him that this is where my property is. I'm sure he didn't have it surveyed to make sure, but he's just thinking that this is what it is. And he'd already put a lot of time and money into this thing. I think something we ought to allow.
And that's ultimately up to the council. So,
well, and I mean, that was my main point of coming down here as well, is I wanted to clarify that it wasn't me wanting to mess up the hillside, because I do know about what has happened with the hillside. I was just using what was already being used a couple years before I bought the place. So I was not, I was not expanding any further than I thought. I wasn't digging into the hillside. I wasn't changing the hillside. So I mean, I feel like I am a little bit more closer to those people because I wasn't altering the space. I mean, I was adding a fence, obviously, and some more landscaping, but I wasn't actually changing the physical top of that hill. I wasn't, and it had been used for 8 years.
Okay.
I think I looked it up. 2013 is when all the trees and everything popped up.
Any comments, council? Direction for staff?
So were the trampoline and the fire pit there? It sounds like the fire pit wasn't there. That was something you were adding and got stopped, correct?
I had a fire pit there and I took it down just to replace it. So yes, there was a fire pit there when I started this smaller one, but there was with a whole bunch of chairs we bought and everything. And I cleared an area.
And the
And then just
trampoline.
like there, I did have a fence, a chain fence around the whole outside, which I had ripped out to start putting the new one. So there was all of this already in place. I was
Okay.
simply just upgrading it, essentially.
I think this creates a real future problem if we allow new construction after the way we handled it with the other individuals. And we need to protect our citizens, but at the same time, when you buy a home, probably ought to have it surveyed or at least know the boundary lines are compliant. But my problem is I look at the Tuacahn Wash and the homes being built along the edge of that, and who's policing the boundary lines. And if they build out into it, is the same thing applicable? So can I just pick up a half acre of ground behind me because it's the city property? Not that that's this big piece here, but we had the one that was fairly large size. And to me, it's not the size of the property, but it's the ability to gain an advantage over a neighbor or another person with what the boundary line changes to. So I think we just have to make sure that we're policing as best we can any new construction. And it's sad that we have to deal with this as a second owner or a third owner rather than the first owner that did it. But anyway, I think the concession has been made with the prior agreements. And I think as long as we're following those prior agreements, we don't have an issue.
So in that case, we wouldn't allow construction of any new improvements beyond the city property line.
Yeah, and if that's what we told the others, I would say no. But I mean, if they had it existing, I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah, I guess the tricky thing with that for me is we're also not going to be policing these other neighbors if they change a rock or if they report some concrete or something. Like, we're not out there checking all the time. And so just because we know that the fireplace has been torn out or the fire pit to be replaced with something nicer, I still think we probably need to allow that to go through. Just because, like I said, any of these neighbors that had that same agreement, they might make some small improvements to it and we wouldn't really know. Obviously, if they're watering it or if there's something really big happening, that it's not going to work. But a fairly small cosmetic change, I could see being fine.
We do have photographs of what is currently there, so we would know if a change has been made, which would be contrary to the agreement that they made with the city. So
That's true.
And since it has to be brought back for approval, I mean, we could discuss it all day long. But to me, we wait for the approval process.
See, and I think the difference in this is a wrought iron fence is a non-permitted use. You don't need to come in for a building permit for wrought iron. You don't need to come in for a building permit to extend a patio. Going out on a wall and so I right or wrong, if somebody went in and put a wrought iron fence up, or the only thing we'd have. I just appreciate that we know it, we can look at it, we can address it. We can record something that addresses it. And I feel in a way if this is the right way to go about it. I look over on Country Lane, that property that, the city just got back that we didn't know we owned. And I would hope those residents at some time come to the city and say, we'd like that property. And so the city doesn't have to take care of 50 feet of property or 30 feet or whatever it is. But in this case, I think I look at it that way, that as far as structure and improvements, I don't know. I don't think we're going to go back and say remove what's there, but also what's there, you kind of need to provide some type of security around it. So you've got a pool, I think, or do you not? Is there a pool there?
That was phase 3.
Oh, that's in
held
the.
up to.
I was going to say I didn't see it on that, but I saw it on here. That's
we
down
had
the
it all
road.
laid out. This is just, I just want to wrap up that back so then I can go on with the rest of
One heck of
we're
a slip and
hoping to
slide
do.
down that hill.
I don't foresee, like I said, this is going to be our dream house. That's why we bought the lot next door as well.
Mayor, I guess for me, if the documentation's there and recorded and everybody's aware of how it was done, in this case, I'm okay. I know it is an improvement in a way, but
Anybody else?
Mayor, I think it would be helpful if that is the direction that the council wants to go, it'd probably be helpful for staff to have an idea of what the council is willing to allow and what you're not willing to allow, just so that, because staff is going to have to look at whatever is being proposed and,
That's true.
or we can just say, just bring it back to council and have council approve it as a condition of the agreement. And you can look at what's being proposed and approve it or not approve it yourselves.
I think from what I'm hearing right now, I'd probably direct staff to go ahead and put an agreement together based on what you've heard tonight. Bring it back to a meeting. We'll have this discussion. His 3 minutes are up.
Well, thank you for working with me.
But then we can, and maybe we can have, a little bit of that, some feedback as far as what we are going to allow, new things that we might consider allowing out there. We'll have that.
Okay.
So what we're talking about is the wrought iron fence and a fire pit, basically what we're talking about.
Yeah, landscape boulders, wrought iron fence, and a fire pit.
And the trampoline.
And I think you just have to probably formulate language that would encompass that the staff can enforce.
Well, and to be totally honest, I think the only real fair way to do it so that you don't have a different agreement with each of those property owners is city council decide what he can finish. And once he's done, he signs the agreement that says nothing else is added, because that's what the agreement says, no more improvements. That's what all the neighbors have agreed to. So the agreement is there. I mean, we've used it with the neighbors. I think what needs to be decided is what you're going to allow him to do before he signs the agreement and says, I'm not doing anything else.
Not just him, but anybody.
But anybody, right, exactly.
Well, let's put that on the agenda, the next agenda. And we'll have that discussion and give staff direction at that. And then you can follow through with the agreement based on what council allows.
Okay.
And we can provide you a copy of the agreement
Okay.
so you can review it in the meantime, but it's the same one that your neighbors have signed, so.
Okay. So I just wait to hear from you guys once that's ready, or
As
It'll be on the next agenda. so-
it'll be, 2 weeks from tonight, it'll be on the agenda, but you've got his email and stuff, Rob.
I think we have it through from TRC and that.
If you want to put it on this and hand it to your email on this, hand it
Okay.
to Brock, they can
Okay.
send that agreement to you.
okay, I'll write it up there.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, sir.
Okay. Hey, thank you very much for your time.
Okay. Conflicts and disclosures. Council, any Anyone have a conflict with items on the agenda tonight that they need to disclose? Item number 4, I have been asked to put together a sketch on that. So pretty minor conflict. Anybody else? Okay, then we'll go ahead and move on to the working agenda. There's no public hearing scheduled for tonight. You have the consent agenda before you, approval of the claims and the minutes, July 28th, regular city council, August 4th, city council work meeting, and the claims through August 11th. You can review the calendar of events there. And item number 3 was to set a public hearing to receive public comment on the issuance and sale of not more than 2.6 million aggregate principal amount of electric revenue bonds for September 8th at 5:05 p.m. Any question on the consent agenda? If there's no need to go individual item, I would look for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll make the motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Got a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Lena and second by Ben. Any question on that motion? This is a money item roll call. Ben?
Aye.
Lena?
Aye.
Jarrett?
Aye.
Benny?
Aye.
Wendell?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you, council. Item number C1, consider approving resolution 2021-12R authorizing the issuance and sale of not more than 2.6 million aggregate principal amount of electric revenue bonds, series 2021 BB, for the purchase of a forced generator. Brock?
All right. So we also have Mark Anderson from Zions Bank Public Finance with us on the Zoom call. But this is, as we done in previously when we did the previous bond, adopting the parameters resolution is the first step, along with setting the public hearing. So in the bond parameters, it sets forth how much we can bond for, as it says, no more than 2.6 million. It sets forth the years it'll be amortized over, a maximum interest rate, who can sign for the bond, sign the bonds, that it designates who can do that. It also starts the contest period with the public hearing. The public has a chance to make public comment on it. So by doing this tonight, setting the public hearing and then holding the public hearing, when it comes time that we want to move forward with the bonds, actually issuing them, the process will be quick. Instead of having to go through this, we can get it done in a much quicker fashion, as we watch and see what rates or whatnot do. So as we do, we talked about this of looking to getting the fourth generator to help with us in our peak loading as we continue to grow. And so, yeah, that's what I have. I don't know if Mark has anything to add, or if you have any questions for myself or for Mark.
Maybe I could just offer a couple of things.
Hey, hold on a sec, Mark. Can we turn the volume up?
See if that works.
Try now, Mark.
Maybe I could just offer a couple of things. First, Brock has done a good job of explaining what the purpose of the parameters resolution is, and the need to schedule a public hearing and the authorization of certain officials to make decisions regarding the terms of the bonds, as well as the signing of them. I know that the city's not anticipating delivery of this new unit until probably May of next year. And so the real question is when's the right time to issue bonds for this? And it would be nice to have some direction from the city as to, what parameters you're hoping to stay within interest rate wise. Because right now my estimate is that based on wrapping this around your existing debt and only increasing the annual bond payments by about $100,000 and keeping that level for 14 years is probably an interest rate range of 1.8 to 1.9%. And so as we monitor interest rates, we really need to have an understanding of, at what point in time would the city want to complete the bonding process in order to reduce interest rate risk if rates start to increase, and sometimes they can do that quite rapidly, and so it would be nice to have some discussion amongst the council and staff as to what they'd like us to do as we try and monitor the market conditions as to when the best time to issue these bonds is.
Feedback, Rob?
Well, not having a crystal ball to see how interest rates are going to move. I mean, definitely where we're at, interest rate. I mean, I don't think we want to allow it to get too high. I mean, above that, where we're 1.89 to 1.99. I mean, but also knowing that as we issue them, that starts when interest payment will come on, or principal and interest payments will come quicker. So if we issue them like we did on the third generator in rough April, I mean, we're going to make a bond payment for that here already. And we won't have a generator for another, 8 months. So we're going to be paying on it before we even have it. And that's all right, but I guess not ideal, but so we kind of run that balance of when do you want to start and where's that interest rate that you're saying, okay, we don't want to be above 2%, 2.5%, whatnot. So.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball either. One of the things that motivated us on issuing the bonds last time was the opportunity to capture some savings by refunding a couple other bonds earlier. Because if we delayed that, we lost that opportunity to capture those savings at a time when interest rates were very favorable. They're still very favorable, but how long that'll last is not known.
Well, if I remember correctly, we don't have to pay for the generator until it's installed, right?
Yeah, we don't pay for it until it's installed. But if you issue the bonds,
You're going to accrue the interest.
it's already started, yeah. So like the one before that money it's sitting there waiting for us to pay, but.
Yeah.
Could you not put it in a interest generate? I don't know could we not set that money aside in a money market account and generate interest on the flip side and help offset that cost for?
You can, and that would be expected. I'm sure that's what's happening currently with the initial bond that was issued several months ago. It would have to be invested in something compatible with the Utah Money Management Act, which is typically the public treasurer's investment fund with the state of Utah. Right now, that's probably yielding less than 0.4%.
But again, at 1.8 and 4/10, so now you're down to 1.4. That still sounds way better than 2.5. And again, we don't know. My answer is short on that is, well, we want the best interest rate we can get. So do it when it's the best, but we don't know that. So,
I think I can say I think I would prefer to do it sooner than later and take the lower rate, even though we're making a payment. Because if you wait too long, you're quickly going to eat up that amount. If you get a 3% interest rate over a 14-year period, you're going to be worse off. So
You're saying do it now?
I'm saying do it now.
Okay.
especially if they're under 2 right now, I just can't imagine doing much better than that. And over a long term, that's a lot of money.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll keep the process going then. We'll have our public hearing in September, and we'll get Mark, and we'll continue the process to issue the bonds here following.
Yeah, I think we could be in a position to issue bonds as early as the first part of October, once we have the public hearing and the contest period run. And we could lock in an interest rate prior to the bond closing. So,
Brock, just for my information, do you know how leveraged the power department will be with this bond? Like, and it's not like a debt to income ratio for this, but what's it called for
Our debt coverage.
Yeah.
Mark, I know Mark and I talked about this, so we're still look good on our debt coverage, but Mark has the exact number, I believe. We were well above what our needs. We were above what our debt coverage needed to be at like 1.25.
I'm just trying to see if I can find the debt coverage ratio that I calculated. We need to maintain a 1.25 coverage, and I think we were still close to 2.0. I'd need a few minutes to dig out the analysis that we had done. But we were only increasing the annual payment by about $90,000 was our estimate. And then as debt falls off, that we would just fill in those with the new payment and keep a level payment through the life of the bonds. Seemed to be the preferred way to do that.
Okay, that'll suffice for me.
All right, so we need to, council's okay with it? Consider approving a resolution.
I can make that motion if you'd like. Okay, I move that we approve resolution 2021-12R, authorizing the issuance and sale of not more than $2,600,000 aggregate principal amount electric revenue bonds, series 2021 BB, for the purchase of a fourth generator as discussed.
And let me, on that motion,
Need a second first.
okay.
I'll second it if you'll change my name from Deny to Denny.
Oh, in the document? It's your reputation, Drake.
I deny most of it, so.
Deny Drake, yeah, it is there.
Okay, so I've got a motion by Jarrett and a second by Denny. Discussion?
Yeah, if I'm not, Mark, correct me, but on the series 2021 BB, it's really 2021 B,
That's correct. I
extra B. with
sent
the-
that correction to the group and it just obviously didn't make it back.
Okay, I'll amend my motion to state series 2021 B for the purchase of a fourth generator.
And I'll accept that change.
Okay, we got a motion by and a second. Any additional changes or discussion, council? It's a lot of money. We'll do roll call. Ben?
Aye.
Aye.
Lena? Jarrett?
Aye.
Denny?
Aye.
Wendell?
Aye.
You guys have it. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you for allowing me to participate via Zoom. It's much appreciated.
No worries, sir.
Appreciate the opportunity to work with the city. It's a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, item number 2, consider approving the Black Desert Development Agreement. Matt?
Yeah, as the council is aware, we've been working with the developer on this project for a number of months. The development agreement has been something that has been sort of an on and off negotiation, but we feel like we've gotten to a place where this agreement's ready to move forward. And I, of course, want to give developers a chance to make comments if they'd like, but if it would be helpful to the council, I can give a quick summary of what's covered in the agreement. Okay. So as you're all aware, the Black Desert project extends over, there's a portion of it in Ivins and a portion in Santa Clara. So this development agreement would only apply to our portion, of course. And it does a few key things really, and it's really a fairly straightforward agreement. A lot of things that have been discussed for potentially including have sort of been taken out. And so it really only does a few major things. Most important thing from the developer's perspective is, I think, is it vests the developer with a maximum of 1,937 total residential units for the portion of the project that's in Santa Clara. And I don't have the acreage right in front of me. What's the acreage in Santa Clara?
297.56.
Okay, so that number, that 1,937 total acres comes from the approval of the master plan, which was approved now probably a year and a half ago. It approved an overall density of 6.5 units per acre, and 6.5 units per acre over that acreage is where the 1,937 units comes from. that density isn't going to be spread evenly across the project, of course. And so one of the things the development agreement allows the developer to do is, as they bring in phases for project plan approval of specific portions of the development, they can cluster that density in order to get higher densities in certain areas. The caveat to that is they have to use their open space where they're not going to develop to make sure that those densities comply with the development agreement and our ordinances. And that the max density that they're permitted under the PDR zone is 8 units to the acre, which they can also increase up to 12 units to the acre if they get an additional approval for bonus density. So the development agreement, and this is probably the most important thing it does, is it allows them the flexibility to take their open space and utilize it in such a way that they can cluster the density and develop the property in the manner that they would like, get those higher densities, preserve those open spaces, and have a lot of flexibility to do that. Open space pursuant to the development agreement can consist of a couple of different things. One is unimproved open space, which we've had some discussions with the developer about taking the open spaces that they plan to have no improvements on, and for them to grant to the city a conservation easement. And so we're in the midst of the process of reviewing what that conservation easement would look like. And then open spaces like significant part of the lava and potentially others that they don't plan to improve would be preserved, and the city would have a conservation easement so that we could ensure that those properties remained open and undisturbed into the foreseeable future. And then they would have improved open spaces as well, like parks and trails and other things that would also, that they could also utilize to offset their densities in other parts of the project. The development agreement also contemplates that they will have commercial development. It states that the commercial development, when it is approved, it will reduce the overall residential units that they can develop in the project, but there's no hard formula set for that. In other words, when they bring a commercial project to the city, they can say, we think that this is the equivalent of, X number of residential units, and then that could be considered and approved by the city at that time. And there may be, that could vary, I think, pretty significantly depending on what type of commercial development they're bringing to the table. I think the mayor said in our last meeting that the most important consideration on that front is just making sure that we have the infrastructure to serve both the commercial development that they want to do as well as the units that they're entitled to. So that'll be one of the biggest considerations as those phases come back for approval. Other things that are covered by the development agreement, including they've committed to dedicate land for the master trails that will comply with the city's master trails plan. The development agreement also lists traffic and road improvements that need to be addressed to address the traffic impacts of the development, and basically requires all of those improvements to be considered as part of a traffic study that they will obtain. The development agreement also provides that they'll contribute to off-site traffic improvements that are identified in that traffic study. And it also addresses things like their ability to receive impact fee credits when they provide some kind of a public system improvement that we don't otherwise pay for. So they upsize a major utility line.
Street light.
A street light that they install a street light that isn't strictly, required by the demand created by their project. It could be anything, but so there's some things in there that none of this is unusual. It's things that we've done before, and that's fairly typical. So, I think that covers the main points. There's a couple of things I did want to point out, and I just want to credit Lena for for identifying this, but the development agreement says in its current form that their project plan, including the golf course, has been approved by the city. And historically, as we went back and looked at what has actually come to the city council for approval, their golf course was actually the PD project plan that includes the golf course was actually considered by the Planning Commission back in September of last year. The Planning Commission recommended that the city approve it. And then the Planning Commission also granted them a conditional use permit for the golf course, but it did not come to the city council after that. So the city council has actually not given the final approval yet on the golf course. And so I don't think that necessarily needs to hold up what we're doing here. I think that if the council is comfortable with the development agreement, we can approve it subject to them coming back and bringing that PD project plan amendment with the golf course for your final consideration and approval. So that's the first thing. The second thing is going back and looking at when the city council approved the master plan, and this, I think Bob called this to our attention, that I think when that approval was given, that it excluded what we've referred to, or what they refer to as Area 6, which is where the trail and the power line and a lot of the lava is along Pioneer Parkway. And I think that the acreage that we're trying to cover with the development agreement, because it's the entire project, actually includes Area 6. And so I'm kind of speaking for them here, but I think that they want the benefit of the density that they would otherwise build in Area 6 so that they can use it elsewhere. And then Area 6 is an area that they want to preserve with a conservation easement. And so what I would recommend we do on that, because Area 6 was excluded from that previous master plan approval, is that we just bring that back to the council at the same time as we do the golf course consideration, have the city council basically amend that master plan approval to bring Area 6 into that as well, so that they have the same density that they're entitled to there. And then it'll all be treated the same. It'll all be covered by the development agreement. It'll all be part of the master plan, and it'll just tie off those loose ends. So do you agree with that, Bob? I just want to make sure that makes sense.
Yes, I think it could come to the next council meeting if you want. It was the amended PDR zone, I think, because what the PDR that's existing really represented the old Knowles pasture plan. So they are bringing through an amended PD zone, and that happened back in June of 2019. And that's when they recommended approval of the plan, except for Area 6. And in Area 6, it's about 18 acres. I think the Planning Commission is concerned about preserving this very unique portion of lava, which is not the entire 18 acres, probably 10 to 12, maybe, something like that. It's really the east portion of that Area 6 that it looks is quite special and unique. So anyway, yeah, Matt, I agree with your summary.
Yeah. So basically, just to recap, so I think what's before you now is the development agreement for your review and approval potentially, but subject to approval by the city council of the amended PDR plan that includes the golf course and also incorporates Area 6. So I think that covers it, unless there's any questions that you have, any details you want to talk about, or obviously if you want to hear from the developer as well.
My question, why didn't that come before the council when, after the planning commission approved it?
I don't know if I know the answer to that, except just looking at the timetable, it was in September of last year, and that was around the same time that we started working on the Regal Homes portion of the property. So it may be that we had sort of set that aside, or the developer set that aside as we worked on that. But I don't know for sure if that's why it just didn't get back to the city. It was,
Matt, I think part of the answer was the instruction was not to bring the amended zoning to the council until the development agreement was
Oh.
also.
and that may be the case. Yeah.
So, we could have brought it tonight, I guess, had we, but anyway, they said, let's hold off on the zoning until the development agreement was ready for consideration or approval.
Yeah. And if we would have realized that soon enough that we could have added it to the agenda, we could have done that tonight, but we just didn't, we didn't discover it soon enough. So, but that being said, Planning Commission did make a unanimous recommendation of approval. They did approve the conditional use permit for the golf course use and did so unanimously, but those things were just subject to this final approval of the city council. So
One of the questions I would have for you, Matt, and maybe for Brock, is that in the section T on the available funding and the resources, it states that the city agrees to use its best efforts consistent with the city's best interests to assist the developer and sponsoring developers' requests when appropriate in obtaining and using any state, regional, or federal funds, including but not limited to grants, reinvestment funds, or other monies. This is not a guarantee, right? We're not going to guarantee that something will affect our bond rating. What we're just talking about is effectively helping them to achieve their goal, but not actually, it says sponsoring, and I don't know what that means, but.
yeah, I don't see it as a guarantee. And the reason I don't is one of the phrases in there is consistent with the city's best interests.
Right.
So as I see it, that's just a way of the city saying, look, if there's opportunities that make sense, we'll help you. And just by way of preview, I think, and maybe I'm speaking too much for the developer here, but I think one thing that they're going to want to come back to the city and discuss at some point is the potential of creating a PID in the city to help finance some of the public improvements. And that the approval of the development agreement does not require the city to do that.
It doesn't say that we have.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about there.
I just didn't know whether sponsoring was co-signing and all of a sudden we're going to throw ourselves into a problem in bonding and stuff. So
They might want you to co-sign, Denny, but
well,
I think
their borrowing capacity.
that's a good question though.
Any other questions for Matt?
I just have one on the Area 6, only because I was on Planning Commission when we walked that and we were really concerned about having that in there.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess on one hand, I'm okay with it from a calculation of a density perspective. But is there something in the amendment when it comes back and we include that it specifically notes that there is to be no building in Area 6?
We've actually already started the process of reviewing the conservation easement, the form of the conservation easement, and that's actually something I need to get back with them on. But from my perspective, and my understanding is your guys are pretty much ready to go forward on the conservation easement as soon as we can get to it. From my perspective, we could get that taken care of, very soon. In other words, almost have that property of concern in Area 6 taken care of, maybe even at the same time we do that approval.
Okay.
So that, I think that would address your concern.
It would. I just want to make
So-
sure that that's noted because it was a big deal.
Yeah.
That's why it was specifically excluded.
Yeah.
And I think, when you had Patrick come up at the last meeting, the indication was that was going to stay open space, Area 6, in accordance with Planning Commission's
Yeah.
recommendations. Any other questions for Matt? And then I'll have the applicant come up.
I was just wondering why Exhibit B and C are blank in the agreement.
Probably just formatting issues. When I did my last review of this, I went through and I thought that I was careful to take out all the blank spaces and, extra letters. And obviously I didn't do a very good job. So that's my fault, but it's no other reason than they just didn't get deleted.
I guess just my concern is the agreement refers to Exhibit B several times, but it's not actually in the.
Oh, you're talking about Exhibit B. Sorry, I thought you were talking about the like numbered sections.
Oh, no, yeah.
No, so Exhibit B that would be attached would be essentially the master plan that was already approved by the city. And so we're not really changing anything there. I did last week when we had finalized this, sent out an email to the applicant asking if they would provide us, what they believe should serve as Exhibit B. And I don't think I got a response. So that's something we still need to nail down, but it shouldn't be anything you haven't seen before. It's basically the master plan and project plan that you've already approved. So.
Any other questions for Matt? Patrick, or anything you want to add to the presentation?
Just want to say it's like tool time now with these monitors. I can just see like everybody's eyes it up. No, I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that there's two things that we are. One thing in particular we're trying to hurry up on, and I'm not trying to burden the council with our problems, but we are finished, pretty much completely finished with the golf holes in Ivans, and now JP, Judd Palmer, is just kind of sitting idle waiting for permission to get into Santa Clara. So I would, if we can possibly approve the development agreement subject to final legal review, and then come back in 2 weeks and submit the project plan, which is the golf course. I didn't realize until just before the meeting that wasn't approved myself. I thought that was approved at Planning Commission back then. So I thought it was I was confused. The project plan to me meant the master plan and everything that goes with it was to go to city council, and the golf course was approved. So I just misunderstood. So that's really it. I don't have a lot to add, but Lena, I can give you my promise that Area 6 won't be developed.
Any questions for the applicant, council?
This isn't a question. Maybe Patrick can just summarize. The developer and their group have been held with the original landowner of this to preserving large portions of open space. And so that going into this project, a lot of that, and this was Mr. Beasley, has been addressed to be preserved. And so those that have concerns about what's out there, and there's a large portion of this lava field that will remain untouched. And you may just refresh on that. And maybe I'm misunderstanding or miscommunicating that, but
what we're projecting to do with the documents that you've already seen at Planning Commission, at least, shows close to 70% of open space in Santa Clara. And like I said, at Planning Commission, however, 18 months ago, the lava doesn't know what city it's in. And we're preserving all of the lava that you see that's in Ivans, other than golf course. There's nothing on it. And so it's not only 70% in Santa Clara, roughly, but it's also another couple hundred acres of Ivans, 200 acres of Ivans as well. And again, it's one flow. So it's not like visually we're protecting much, much more.
Other questions for Patrick? Thank you, Patrick. Council, any other discussion? It's been a while getting the development agreement here. It's gonna be good to be able to get it implemented. Anybody want to take a shot at a motion?
I would move that we approve the development agreement as has been explained with the legal review on the additional application that's going to come in, and with the developer, as is stated, maintaining open space to retain the view which we have in Santa Clara, and I would move that we approve it.
Motion, to have a second?
We need to include, oh, you need a second before we need to include the,
I need a second.
all right, I'll second, then we'll,
Oh, got a motion
That's-
by Denny and a second by Ben. Additional discussion, questions?
just probably specific to the, and I think Lena's probably got it all written down. So I'll let her go, and then I'll say it and then you'll add to it anyway. So go ahead. You got it.
I was just gonna say, make sure that it's subject to the amended PDR and Area 6.
That's fine.
And
I
then
agree.
subject to Exhibit B being in the agreement.
That's fine too.
Do we need to address anything now about the golf course? Or is that going
Golf
to?
course is covered in there. They'll have to submit their grading plans and stuff for their grading permit to get going, but I think the golf course is pretty well covered in there. The requirements for the golf courses.
Are you talking about your free roads? Or is that?
No. Just want to keep Judd out there, just, that, keeping that rock moving.
Okay, so you're okay, your motion's okay with all those additions? Your second's okay with all those additions?
Yes. Good work.
Should I have Chris read it back? Any other question or discussion? Okay, roll call. This is an agreement, so roll call. Ben,
Aye.
Lena,
Aye.
Jarrett,
Aye.
Benny,
Aye.
Wendell.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you, council. Thank you, gentlemen.
Go to town.
Get some grading plans in. Okay,
One of the things for Ben and Lena, I thought that Matt was going to review those as part of the development agreement, so I didn't include it, but that's fine. That's great.
It's okay. It just has to come back to council for approval.
yeah, the master plan's gonna come back anyway. Or the-
Not that, I think it's important to understand the way they're clustering that, it's going to preserve, there's going to be some pretty high density areas. And I think we went to one. And the commercial is going to be great. That's a great, but it's because of the high density, it's going to leave a
lot
whole
of,
bunch of open space out there. When you think of cost of development and infrastructure and things like that, maintenance and all that, I think that's great.
I'll tell you, the one hole that we were trying to preserve is right off the bike path. And according to a geologist, he told us that that was some of the oldest lava rock in the Western United States.
Wow.
Right in our own backyard. You ride it on your bike every
You ride
time
right
you
through.
ride
It's
right
really
by it.
cool. I was looking
It's
at
where that
as
bowl,
one-
it's where the bowl is.
As we
pretty
look
cool.
for parking and places to access that, that's a cool
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
Just don't fall in it.
Wendell said that was intuitively obvious. Most cabs of reserve are dropping by on Pioneer Parkway. That was the oldest lab in the world. Okay. Number 3, consider increasing the carbon-free power sales contract by 2 megawatts. Gary, you're just full of spending tonight, aren't you?
That's what Jack always said too. I just like to spend money. No, we're just looking to increase our capacity in the carbon-free project, 2 more megawatts to make a total of 5 megawatts. I don't have any other discussions except from what we had last week, unless we have any more questions for me. Do we need to look at the graphs again? Would you like to see those again, or?
Council?
I
Seen them a couple
I
times.
just had one question and I had to step out and on that is just, we still have in our agreement the ability, there's exit strategies in case there's ways that we're going to commit to 2 more at 5, which I totally agree with. But with new scale and all that, we still have the same updates, the same, if things
Yeah.
don't go.
Exit ramps are still.
Yeah, the
Yes.
exit ramps are there for us.
Yeah, with the increase to 5 megawatts, just our liability goes up a little bit more if we do back out. It was like, I can't remember what it was, almost $7,000 or $8,000 more at the last bailout time. But,
Okay.
So there is a little bit more risk going an extra 2 megawatts, but that doesn't change the fact that we still need it.
Well, and it's, yeah,
And we're not gonna find power this, if it.
well,
goes
and
for this
that's
cheap, so.
stable, it's the
Yeah.
stability of it that's more important. That it's a project that we know is gonna be around for
40 years
a long
is
time.
our contract. So
Okay. Any other questions for Gary?
I would just like to note for the minutes that UAMPS, this is what they have provided to us, that this is the right decision for our city. And so we're relying on their expertise as well as Gary's to make this decision.
yes, just going over with Jack and Kelton up at UAMPS. He plugged it into his spreadsheet, and with a 3.5% growth over the next, the next 10 years, they still figure 2 megawatts should be enough. So we're not too long in the winter months, but we'll still be, covered.
3.5 over the next 10 years, is only 33% increase. Is that really, aren't we looking and growing at a more rapid pace than that in actuality?
Yeah.
Currently, yes, but once we get built out, I don't know. Just historically, 3.5% of the year is about what we've been. Like I said, we're going to be built out here. Who knows how long? The building could just drop off next year. We just don't know. That's just the figures we plugged in, was 3.5% growth.
I think that's a safe.
Yeah,
that's a
pretty conservative.
Pretty conservative number there.
Yeah.
And that number is consistent with what we've done on our impact fee analysis as we've gone forward in doing those, is that 3.5 to 4%. So.
I'm happy to make a motion if you're ready.
I would, if there's no other questions, then I would accept a motion.
Okay, I move that we increase the carbon-free power sales contract by 2 megawatts as presented.
Second. Oh, Wendell, you take that.
You want to give it up?
I'll give it to Wendell.
Motion by Jarrett and a second by Wendell to approve the increasing the carbon-free power sales contract by 2 megawatts. Any question on the motion? Roll call, Wendell,
Aye.
Denny,
Aye.
Jarrett,
Aye.
Lena,
Aye.
Ben.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you, Gary.
Okay. Thank you, council. Thank you, Mayor.
In 30 years, I'll be able to tell my grandkids that you can thank Wendell Goobler, that you have sustainable energy. So
I'll be dead by then.
they'll still be thanking you.
Okay, item number 4, consider approving the reconfiguration of Santa Clara Drive and Gates Lane to add a left turn lane. Dustin?
After last week's discussion on the widening of the intersection of Gates Lane and Santa Clara Drive, I went and revisited the intersection and found that there is room to do a decel lane onto Gates Lane. We'll do what's called a shared bike path, so we can keep bike paths on both sides, east-west travel lanes, and the center lane going all the way through. It's work that we can do in-house. I'd like to start on it soon, except for the striping that would be contracted out. If you look at the lower map, you see that we have one right up the road at the Swiss Village Townhomes. It's always been real successful. Never had any problems with it.
Sweet.
So there's really 10 planters we're going to take out?
Yeah.
Wow.
It would, if we just did the 8, it would just leave the 2 down by Jacob Hamlin. And, I think it would look more finished if we take all 10 out.
Okay.
And we will lose all on-street parking through that section that we restripe.
You're going to try and keep the parking outside of the restriping,
Yeah.
but do you want to take out those 2 planters that kind of guard that parking?
Mhm.
So
So it
10
would be-
planters total, right?
What's that?
10 planters total?
Yep. It would be everything that you see in the new stripes
Yeah.
and add the 2 to the west.
And we discussed in last meeting that if this property that's in the southeast of this picture wants to have on-street parking, they could just move the sidewalk back and use their land for that, if that was a part of their plan ever.
hopefully they'd be able to find it on site.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'll just invite some of the same conflicts that we've got down at Fruit Stand.
Yeah.
I think this is gonna be great. So
Brad, I know that we talked about trees and you said all the trees I thought were gonna be tossed. When I drove through there, the other night I was looking at the trees and there's a couple down on the far end that look like they're fairly new. They're actually tied down there.
Yeah, there's two on the south side that are fairly new that could be removed.
So
and
can we
replaced.
take those out and replace them somewhere else rather than just getting rid of them?
That's the thought. The
Okay.
bigger ones we can't, but those smaller ones
We
that
can
we
do that.
recently put in
Okay.
should be fine.
Okay.
And Brad's got to replace all of those trees, at least on a 1-to-1 someplace, right?
Right.
Oh,
We'll save as many as you can. Minimize the
they-
cost.
That's kind of what we've kind of set that informal policy. If you take one down, you put one back to maintain our
just down Santa Clara.
tree inventory, right? Which is an asset to the
Right.
city. And that budget can come out of Brock's administration if necessary.
Thank you, sir.
So get the big ones, Brad.
And then Dustin, so the decel lane, is it going to look like it looks for Swiss Village?
Yeah.
That's what it'll look like.
Yeah.
I do agree that's functioned really well.
Yes.
Okay.
We actually have quite a few of them all over town.
Gives them a nice place to put their garbage cans on trash day. Line them up. There's like 30 of them or 40 of them out there.
They do.
I think it's an excellent idea and a good plan. It's too bad we can't do it at every intersection, but
We'll get it started
You
with this
built
one.
this
and-
street.
I build it with compliance with the request of the citizenry.
I know the people that live down there are excited about this, those that I've talked to.
Yeah.
It's just a safe, and again, we can get more trees around there and do all that, so.
Yeah.
Mayor, I'm good to make a motion on this, that we approve the reconfiguration of Santa Clara Drive and Gates Lane as presented.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Ben and a second by Jarrett to approve the reconfiguration of Santa Clara Drive and Gates Lane to add a left turning lane as presented, including the removal of 10 planters. You're okay with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Any question on that motion? Let's see, better do roll call. There's money item, Ben.
Aye.
Lena,
Aye.
Jarrett,
Aye.
Denny,
Aye.
Wendell.
Aye.
Has it. The ayes have it. Thanks, Dustin.
Thank you.
We're gonna be down like 12 of those now with these out and the other two that have been crashed into and.
Those have to be put back.
Oh,
in,
they
too.
can put back together. So like Humpty Dumpty.
And we want to charge their insurance company the same price we paid the church. 7 something a pop. That's our comparable. Okay. Mayor and council reports. Ben?
Only one I have, Mayor, is went through Tag and Go. That's open for business, and there were several youth from Santa Clara working at it. So it was nice to see that open. So I'm actually excited for the commercial a little further down to see what comes and be good. But that's all I have. I don't had no meetings, and
Okay.
we're good.
Thanks, Ben. Lena?
I will report that yesterday was our free swim day at Sandhall Aquatic Center. I was not there during the day, but I did take my grandson over last night, and there were a number of people there from the city who were taking advantage of it. Timmy, the director of the shack, is supposed to get me our final count by Friday, and I'll pass that along so you'll know how many of our citizens went to that, but it looked like it was pretty well attended from what I could tell. And then we have a meeting for Heritage Commission tomorrow. We are going to be going over our members, our committee members. Some of our members are retiring, so we're going to discuss what that looks like, and then I'll come back to mayor for an appointment of some new mayors or some new members.
How many are going off?
For sure, one, possibly two.
Which one? Don?
Dawn is for sure. and then maybe one other. So,
Okay,
and that's all I have.
all right, Jared.
I attended the meeting with internet service providers along with Brock and Mayor in St. George on Tuesday. CenturyLink, which they go by lumens with all their fiber installations presented, and then TDS also presented. And it was really interesting. A lot of information was given. Probably the biggest takeaway for me from the discussions were if the economics work was said quite a bit on fiber expanding to southern Utah. So Lumens actually has 4 planned pilot projects in St. George, and in areas where they have really, really poor service, they're putting fiber in existing conduit. The fibers become small enough they can just run it right along their phone line, basically, in the conduit. So it's very unobtrusive to the neighborhood. But they also acknowledge that they will try to expand that to the rest of southern Utah if it goes well, but it's all dependent on the upper brass and if the economics line up. And so kind of the concern is if we rely only on our local internet service providers, there most likely will be pockets of southern Utah that never get fiber because the numbers will never line up. Either it's not dense enough, or there's too much rock in the ground, or whatever other reason they might come up with. And so that's kind of a major concern, I think, for St. George especially. There might be areas that are permanently depressed because they just don't have a good enough internet connection. So it was just really interesting. And so we're still pursuing possibly creating an interlocal agreement with all the cities. And so we'd actually all come together to provide fiber service. Well, to partner with UIA to provide that service. And so that's moving along as expected. And maybe they'll have anything else they want to report on that, but that was my takeaway from it. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, Denny?
We met with the Water Conservancy District on Thursday to discuss the water situation in the county, and they explained it pretty well and put it on a graph for us to show us the needs. And as I visited with them informally later, I'm not sure that we shouldn't be reviewing our landscape requirements by ordinance. Open space 30% and landscaping and what we're going to require them to put in. If things don't line up, by 2025, you will be doing some major changes. And it looks to me like if we could revise our ordinances now, it's not a matter of drought. It's a matter of if there's going to be enough water, period. So to me, there's some things that we need to review, and according to them, it is up to the cities to do that, not up to the Water Conservancy District. We have to be in the forefront of making the conservation effort. You were there, Mayor. Anything else in that?
Yeah, and just brief update, the Technical Advisory Committee for the Water District, the Rural Water Supply Agreement, TAC, we're working on a common landscape ordinance that all the cities would adopt, so that each city is the same and you're not going to be changing city to city. It's going to be eliminating a lot of turf, basically no I keep saying oriental turf, but ornamental turf, and a bunch of other things. They're also looking at things to do inside the home, the recirculating hot water and things like that that can help with your water conservation. So there's going to be a significant number of conservation measures. They're meeting every other week, going through that. Dustin's on that group. Christelle's been going as well. I snuck in and disrupted things last time. But they said they were going to invite me back, even though I did. But they've got a target that I think is kind of interesting. The state right now requires like 0.86 acre feet per connection as their source requirement for per state code. Based on our actual usage down here, that number is less. It's like 0.779. So if we get the state to adopt that, it takes our existing water rights and it'll provide water for a bigger population. They're shooting to have like a 0.55 on that. So they're shooting to be able to take our existing water base and provide for a much larger population. But it's going to require significant amount of conservation. They're looking at a target use for every home, 146,000 gallons per home. That's all you get. So that if you go home and total up your water bill for your water usage over the last year and see if you're meeting that now, and then you're going to see how much you're going to have to bring it in. They're talking about putting this in on new growth to start. So all new developments would have to meet it from the get-go, and then probably provide incentives for existing residential users.
Well, and I thought it was good that the Home Builders Association is a part of this, because they're talking about trying to create smart homes and environmentally more efficient in what they do. And so that's what they were looking at unifying, was also the construction standards for the various cities, so that a contractor building in St. George would have the same requirements as they would in Santa Clara.
So that you're going to see a lot of that. The TAC is meeting almost every 2 weeks. You've gone to weekly now. There's another committee that's meeting as well. So there's going to be a big effort there. They also had a meeting earlier this week that I was invited to, and talking about water use specifically on the Santa Clara side. And it was kind of interesting that when you just look at Gunlock and the water that's coming down the Santa Clara River, and then the ability for St. George City to deliver reuse and secondary out on this side, there's not that much available water left there. So it's a matter of repurposing the water that we've got, so to speak. St. George is looking to expand some additional reuse storage reservoirs out here. The push is being made to have the water district assume that role. So the water district would be the one doing those additional reservoirs out here, not necessarily the city of St. George. They're trying to resolve the U.S. Fish and Wildlife concerns with the spine dace, the Virgin River spine dace, which is a threatened species in the Santa Clara River that is almost like the number one priority. If the fish has to have its water, or we end up in an endangered fish situation on the Santa Clara, which changes a lot of things. We start having to do the same stuff as we got on the Virgin. So the fish is going to get his water. Just live with it. They're supplementing irrigation water with Gunlock wells right now. Santa Clara's, I sit through and I listen to what Ivans has happened to do, and Santa Clara's not in nearly that bad a shape, thanks to the forefathers that settled the area here. There's going to be more meetings going forward on this. There's some water rights acquisition issues that Brock and I have talked about. For us to be able to use our share of that reuse water that's going out of the plant, we have to actually file a water right on it. We're the only ones that can file the water right on it, but we haven't never done it to date. So that's probably something that we're going to want to do sooner than later, is to get that right filed. St. George is filed, but I don't think any of the others have. Right now, when they have a cutback on the Santa Clara, the farmers take a haircut, the residential customers don't. There's got to be a way to balance that, especially as we get more and more secondary users on like Santa Clara system, like Rhone. The city's obligated to provide that secondary water, even if the secondary water is not available from Gunlock. So if the farmer down there that our water rights are based on takes a 40% haircut, we're still obligated to provide the secondary use to the residents that signed up on our system. It has to come out of our share. We need to work on that a little bit so that, like Ben, when Ben wants to turn on his sprinklers, he can use it, though the farmer across the street had to take a 40% haircut and let part of his field dry up.
That's the farmer. Hey, quick question on that. As I was laying in bed the other night, stewing on water, like, do they have plans to dredge out? These reservoirs get filled with sediment. Gunlock's full of sediment.
Yeah.
It's low.
They dredged it 5 years ago.
Well, they need to dredge. You'd have to, in order to do it, it'd be the same way as like flood control or cleaning out these river basins.
Yeah.
But literally, you would think they could increase that capacity by maintaining a good dredge significantly.
Gunlock has a new capacity of, I want to say 10,000 acre feet. It's down to about 7,000 acre feet now, 7,100 acre feet, and it loses about 100 acre feet a year to sedimentation.
So
they're looking
again,
at
you're picking up
ways to do that.
30% just getting the sediment out of there. And that's a reservoir that's there. So you'd think that would be, you look at Baker Dam going up there. And it's not a big reservoir, but it's full of sediment on that north end on that north end. So,
But they are doing that too.
so, and that's the thing, if it's constantly maintained, those are, you're talking thousands of acre feet. If we just in years like this have a plan to go, okay, it's going to be expensive, but we don't have to go build a new reservoir. It's there.
Here's the kicker with Gunlock is in order to fill a reservoir with reuse water, you have to pump it all winter. So you start pumping up there in October and you pump through the winter and you pay the pumping price to push the water all the way up there. If you get a high water year, your reservoir's full when the flood hits. And now you filled it, paid all the extra money to fill it, and now the high water comes and it just runs down the river.
I'm thinking dredge it out and just have it ready for that, because you think about it, we get those January rains almost every year.
But if we get the good January rains, it fills in 3 or 4 days.
Yeah. And that's why I'm thinking get it dredged out, make sure we can pick up that extra 3,000 acre feet.
There's a balance there. How much do you pay in advance versus how much do you think you're going to get from Mother Nature? They're working on that. It was interesting, the conversation that went through all that was fairly interesting.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the users don't want to pay the higher pumping rates to fill the reservoir with reuse. So, but how much risk do you take? And that's why they want to get about 5,000 acre feet of additional storage on the west side, which is Graveyard Wash Reservoir and a new reservoir at Dry Canyon or Dry Wash. Dry Wash is in the middle of Canada. Canada folks don't want it, so there's some issues to resolve that way. So lots of fun stuff going on with the water district. There'll be a lot more information coming. Jared gave you a good update on the TDS. I met with the Spin Scooter folks today. They're coming next week, 2 weeks. They're coming in 2 weeks for a presentation at City Council on the Spin Scooter Ding. Washington City just signed up. Just signed a new agreement with Spin. There's actually some revenue that goes direct to the city with the new agreement, so they're going to forward that to me. I'll get it to these guys, and you'll have a presentation in a couple of weeks from the scooter folks to bring maybe the same scooters that are serving St. George and Washington to Santa Clara and Ivins. Ivins is looking at it too, and we'll have input on where to put them and all that stuff. So it's been a busy couple of weeks. Brock, do you have anything you want to share with the council?
I don't think so. Can't think of anything.
Okay. Directors, I got one for Chief. No, you. Can we talk about what happened over the weekend or not? Just say no if we can't.
Well, which incident? We have
Party in Vegas.
The thing I had to put in an evidence bag and give to.
Oh, okay. So you all received a letter, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
She got one. You should have got one, but I intercepted it and it went
It's the
to
creepiest
me.
thing I've ever read. Do you want it? I kept it.
Yeah. What you need to do is you need to put it in an envelope. Have you opened it?
Yes.
Okay.
I-
Don't handle it anymore. Just put it in a sealed envelope and just give it to Brock and I'll come get those. And what we're doing is we're passing them up to the FBI.
Okay.
And we St. George, everybody over there got them too. Yeah, it's a creepy letter.
Yeah.
I'll tell you about
You
it.
get those.
Tell them about it. These guys didn't get one.
I didn't.
Jared didn't see it and Ben didn't get one.
Well, the letter basically starts out that there's, if you've got the letter, we're already dead kind of thing. And it talked about how they've put some sort of radioactive stuff of some kind of material buried underneath all the water sources, which just to do that would be a really phenomenal thing. And then they went off and talked about some businesses and made a lot of threats. It's about a page and a half letter. I would say it's a threatening, terroristic kind of threatening letter. I don't know who the author is. They're working on it in a number of ways. So far, the letters are not showing much physical evidence. So the person whoever sent those was pretty careful. But because of the nature and the threatening of the letter, and it's become a federal thing, so it's a case that we're handing off to the FBI. We're just gathering the evidence. So if you get the letter, don't open it. Most of them have been opened, but if you get one, you can tell when you get it. It's a really weird looking thing, and just call me and I'll come get it, and we will pass it on. And St. George, everybody got them over there. They've been passed around a little bit. We're waiting to see. It's really the fascinating thing about it's local, and there's some things in the letter that tells us local thing, and so that's about all we want to talk about on that. So.
I intercepted you. I went to get yours too, but you'd already got it.
Oh, it's really creepy.
Yeah, you look at it, it's a spooky letter. I mean,
I'm like, I said to my son, "Is this real?" And he's like, "Yeah, Mom, that's on the periodic table."
yeah.
He's like, "It's really real." It's
Well, if the
he's like,
person that
"Bad
wrote the
stuff."
letter, to me, it's an intelligent individual. They're not,
Yeah.
they're not, they're logical in a crazy sort of way. We've been having to do some dealing with some homeless folks in the hills that have set up a couple of really pretty large camps. I don't know what you want me to do about those. We can get real aggressive and move them out, but we're going to need some help with cleaning it up. We've gone up there. The individuals are just homeless, and they've set up camp up. I don't know how they do it in this heat, but no, I'm not looking for much right now. I'm going to talk to Brock a little bit about it and get some guidance on it. And
What's the BLM say? I'm assuming they're on BLM.
BLM is not doing much about it. They've got such a big problem all through the county. 2 or 3 campers up in our hills is no big deal. They've got people setting up like literal little trailer camps all over the place, and where people are just we have people that are living in them and working. And BLM is working on it, but they're not. They're really busy folks, and so they've sort of taken, I wouldn't say a hands-off approach, handle it as they come at them, but something that we're probably going to have to start dealing with a little more and more. And I know that we talked about the firearms range. Fall's coming. Those hills are going to fill. And right now I would like to, I know this is controversial, but I'd like to at least take the city limits part of it out of, no shooting at all. And, but again, I'll talk to Brock about that. We just need a little guidance on what you want us to do there.
We're getting closer, I think, to just the conversations I've had with council of closing it inside the city limits and possibly even coming forth with the de-annexation out of removing a large portion of it out of the city.
Yeah.
It's on TRC agenda tomorrow, right?
But I have to tell you, I saw the strangest thing out there. I've never seen those desert iguanas. Have you seen those out there? Those things are huge. Have you ever seen those? A desert iguana? I was out there and there was a thing, I'm not kidding you. It was on a big rock and I thought the rock moved. And this thing took the whole top of I've never seen one of those. They look prehistoric. Have you seen one? I didn't even know I thought somebody's pet got out. It's a real thing.
Are they? I've
Basic?
never even heard of seeing it. You?
No, I called BLM on it. They said, no, they're called a desert iguana. They're all over mesquite. This thing was, I can't even guess how long it was, but I'm telling you, it had to be that big around and its head was huge. I couldn't believe it. I'd never seen anything like that before. I thought about shooting it, but I thought I didn't want to get in trouble.
What's it taste like?
Chicken. Yeah, I thought it was going to attack me for a minute, but I actually called him. I called the wildlife guys and said, I think there's something loose up here. And he goes, no, they're out there.
Wow.
Who knew? So if you see one,
Somebody's turned them loose.
they're scary to see. So
Those hills for years.
anyway, that's the,
All
everything
right.
else is going really
Thank,
well.
thank you.
Okay.
Anything for Chief?
Mhm. It was a bicycle crash. Mhm. That's the one that I'm familiar with. There was a bicycle crash where a person died that went off. They went off a fairly steep. Right.
Is Bear Claw the one that goes out by Gap Canyon?
No. Bloomington.
Uh-huh.
Oh, in Bloomington. Okay. Gotcha.
And actually in that St. George news, it was reported as a hiker falling off a cliff.
Okay, now listen, that could have happened. I'm familiar with the bicycle one. I'm not familiar with somebody falling off a cliff.
There was a 32-year-old lady that fell off a cliff and she was with her family, but it was.
I skipped one. I'll come back to you, promise.
Well, we also had a person up here looking at the petroglyphs, died of heat exhaustion. They went up there, they were from Salt Lake, and it was the days when it was like 115, 117. They went up there with not a lot of water, spent a little extra time, and by the time we got to them, we knew that they were pretty much over, but there was heat exhaustion out there. And I'm not kidding you, man, 117 hiking, I don't know. You got to have a crazy death wish on that thing. But been busy with the medical stuff.
Okay. Questions for Bob?
Right, Randy? Okay.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay.
Did I get you? Danny, did you do comment?
I
You
did.
did, but did you finish?
Well, I'll talk to Mayor. There's a couple of things that I talked to Vic.
Had a meeting on Monday on the solid waste district. There were basically three items that I thought were interesting. First of all, the fleet's getting old, and needs to be something done about maintaining it, and maintenance costs are going up. So they're probably going to be buying some new garbage trucks and setting a better standard on how to maintain them.
This Republic or Solid
Yeah.
Republic?
And second thing was they have these dumpsters at night. If you're going out there to dump, you don't have to go there during daylight hours. You can go out and dump anytime you want. And those dumpsters right next to the scale.
Mhm.
Apparently been having a lot of commercial people going out and dumping after hours and not getting charged for it. So they're looking at shutting down the after hour bins. So you might go out there some evening thinking you're going to get there and be able to dump, and you probably won't be able to get. They're going to try that for a while and see if that's going to change things. But problem is caused because the commercial people are using it when they shouldn't be using it. Third thing that was discussed, other states next to us are wanting to bring their waste into into us, Nevada, Arizona. And they tabled it because they didn't have enough information on it. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't think we ought to be doing that. I think we ought to be taking care of our own citizens and not worry about the other states. I think you're looking at having them bring in contaminated stuff that you don't want to even deal with if you're worrying about the other states' stuff. We have no way of controlling it. So anyway, if you have any thoughts about that, if you feel like we ought to, they'll pay us for it, but I don't think we ought to even do that.
The problem is you've got your cells and those are 50-year cells. And if you start importing, those are going to be filled and you're going to have nowhere to go for new cells.
I understand that. I think they did table it. It'll probably be discussion next time we have a meeting. So if you feel like you want to accept this stuff, let me know. If you don't, my thoughts are no, that we shouldn't be doing it.
I would think so. Fredonia, I'm just trying to think, Colorado City, Fredonia, they've got their own. Is it just Vegas, Mesquite?
Well, you will get it from California.
Really?
In fact, when our former creamer, Steve Creamer, set his up in Uinta Basin, and they had the train, they brought it in from LA, San Francisco. But that was hazardous.
Yeah, that was the bad stuff.
Yeah, that was the hazardous waste.
That's basically it.
All right. Sorry, I skipped over you. Did you have anything else? Nothing. You didn't have nothing?
No, I'm good.
Any of you guys got anything you want to present to council? Council want to ask these guys anything? Bingo. Do we have executive session?
No, sir.
I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Need a second.
Second.
A motion by Denny, a second by Wendell to go home. Any question on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I think that's